Baba knows the way. For Joseph Baba Ifa, Baba knows the way. We follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred lines. He speaks with the ancients. He honors the drum. He carries the wisdom where we all come from.
Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. We're only the strongest roots, see the light, brought to you by 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗿𝗃 Candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, hit that subscribe button. Now, for all of us that are privileged to be able to come to the Podcast Doctor Studios, you really interact with a lot of great people. Phil is really a nucleus when it comes to this podcast game. And, being with him for some years now, we've met a lot of great people, and people kind of come in and out, and we kind of pick off of each other's ideas and see how people are doing things differently within the industry. So Phil is always coming up with some great ideas and having great guests. So ironically, while we were recording a members live, one of his guests here in studio was asking him a bunch of questions, and he was like, well, why don't we put you on camera and you could just ask Joseph
on the spot.
Yeah. So
Yes.
So what I wanted to go ahead and do is introduce our guest, Miss Joy. She's one of the people here that frequents the podcast studio who's actually listening in. She has a podcast called Nobody's Safe. So, Miss Joy, if you want to kind of introduce yourself to the Our Roots community, let them know about your podcast, and we can get into some questions for sure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you are so well. No, thank you for the opportunity and having me on your show. This is such a shocking surprise right now, because as I was listening to you speak, I was learning as well, and it was just amazing at the things that I was hearing. I was so interested behind the different religion and what it stands for and what is this and what is that. So it was very, very impressive, and I am so honored that Phil came up with this idea. I'm like, there is no way I'm gonna go on this podcast right now.
He's a Pandora's box of spontaneity.
Yes. So basically, my podcast is actually the Nobody's Safe podcast. I just started my podcast. You can actually find it on YouTube at Nobody's Safe Podcast. We are on Facebook right now. We're on YouTube, and we're on Instagram. Trying to build up the audience. Very excited about it. Came to Phil's studio, shot our first episode on last week, and went very well.
Nice.
So I was so excited. I am so excited to see how it goes from here. Not only that, it's different subjects. It's not just one thing that we're talking about. We're talking about life in general. We may be talking about why do people cheat. Then we may be educating you on what not to do or what not to use when it comes to credit repair, on how to do a credit repair. We may be talking about local football, basketball. So we're going to be talking about everything on this podcast, and I am so excited. So excited.
Nice. Yeah. The podcast game is a wild one. I think we're in a time where people don't talk enough about the issues, right? Or the things that really matter are going to have a positive effect on us. So hearing something like what you're doing is refreshing for sure, because not everybody has that resource to be able to reach out to somebody and ask them these crucial things, and have that guidance and mentorship.
And that is so true, because the thing about it is that what you were speaking on, I did hear one of an individual who I know was speaking on the same religion. And he was telling me about it, but I didn't get in depth or, with it. And as I was sitting here, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, this is really going on. And as I was reading some of the comments on the live scene that you were just doing when the young lady say she was doing, I believe it was the death
doula.
the
Yeah.
death doula.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely
like,
not something you hear about every day.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, is she dealing in death?
Is she
Yeah,
killing people? She's like, whoa, she the
Kill,
Grim Reaper?
behave.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, is she killing people?
Oh, God.
Like, yes. So whenever, you spoke on it's the transition of death and making sure that person is at peace.
Yes.
While they're in their last, they're in hospice and they're on their last, wishes. They may want to just go in peace, and she's going to provide them that sense of peace.
Yeah.
That just gave me so much like, oh wow, I have questions to ask them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is definitely an opportunity, and hopefully this will help someone else that has never heard of this religion or this practice, and the questions they may have, hopefully the few questions I have, hopefully that can help them, moving forward.
Yeah, well, the majority of people have the same questions. I mean, I call myself a broken record, but you begin to realize sometimes we have to hear things multiple times or in different ways to realize, oh, that was my question, right? Awareness is big for us because Ifa has been around pretty much since time, right? Or has been around since anything's been around. But even with that, it's still very shrouded in mystery. It's still very secretive. I mean, even the way that I was trained and the way I was raised, it was a little bit hermetic. Because it was just something you really didn't speak about, because being that it was so misunderstood, and then you had all kinds of personality types and activities going on around it, especially in Miami and places like New York. It was just really something that was almost taboo in conversation. So Phil has deemed this the Ifa for Dummies episode. I'm not a huge fan of the name, but, it's like the book. And, I hope that it has the same effect that you mentioned, just to bring awareness and clarity. There's things we can't talk about, but whatever we can talk about, I love to talk about.
Okay,
so.
perfect. And just let me know, what questions, we cannot talk about.
No, I'm definitely going to have an answer for all of them.
Yes.
For sure, yeah.
So the first question for me, what is Ifa? And how would you explain it to someone that has never heard of it before?
Yeah. So I always like to go back to the name. I think that always provides a great etymology. And the word Ifa, they say, was the first sound that was uttered in the universe by our creator, Ifa, right? So it was almost the sound of creation. So when we actually define Ifa, Ifa is identified as the voice of 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗲. 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗲 is our creator, right?
Okay.
𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗲 means basically the owner of time or infinity. And the way 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗲 speaks to us isn't the way we're speaking to each other. Our brains, our ears cannot handle the decibel level of God's voice. So the way he actually communicates is through natural means, and that would be divination. The way that Ifa divines is actually through the seeds that fall from a tree known as the African oil palm, right? Or 𝗿𝗚𝗔 genasis, I believe it is its Latin name. And basically through nature watching and seeing apes do this over hundreds of years, we, the priests of Ifa or 𝗷𝗶𝗍𝗲s, imitated their actions through playing with the seeds or pulling the seeds, which is 16 of them, based on divine geometry. And based on pulling it or utilizing them, we're able to manifest binary code on the tray of Ifa. So the easiest way to correlate it is for anybody that's seen The Matrix. When Neo gets to the point where he can start seeing the ones and zeros rather than faces and hands, that's what Ifa is manifesting there.
He's entered the Matrix, he's entered the Matrix.
Well, actually, Ifa is actually us exiting the Matrix.
Oh, wow.
So the Matrix is a construct to kind of keep us blind or asleep. With Ifa, or through initiation into Ifa, such as the hand of Ifa, our true destiny is revealed. It's actually the first time our real soul penetrates our brain for the first time. Before the Odu is revealed, or our sign is revealed, which is one of 256, we're simply organic matter, right? So through the hand of Ifa, we're actually reminded through this divination system what was meant for us here on earth, what we promised to do on earth before leaving heaven. And this is really key information, because until we get these things done, or we have this self-realization, we're working against nature rather than with it. So if you look at the concept of human beings, we're actually some of the most uninvited creatures on earth.
Okay.
We step on earth all day. We utilize her resources. We don't always say thank you. So we're at natural odds and ends with her every day that we walk. So the way we're able to enter into that communion with her is by offering the things we said we would before we arrived.
Now, when you say get things done, we need to get things done here on earth before we get to heaven.
Yes, ma'am.
Like, what would be those things? Like, is there things that we are put here to do? What can you clarify? What is it that we would need to do? And how
Absolutely.
can we go about figuring that out? What is it that we need to do?
Absolutely. So if you're here, you're definitely here with a purpose, right? Every person that walks Earth is a miracle, right? When you look at all of the different possibilities of genetics and, you know, all the different specimens that go into making a human being, we're literally one of trillion possibilities. So we're meant to be here. But to be able to answer that fully, we kind of have to go into our theology a little bit. So Ifa identifies that from the moment of conception, a couple things start happening. There's these two gentlemen, one named 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗲 and one named 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗲, that confection our body out of clay and iron, respectively, from the neck to the toes. When that occurs in heaven, we're then thrusted into the house of a gentleman known as 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍𝗍. Now, this guy's interesting because his whole purpose is to mold heads and destinies out of clay. So we go into his house blind, a headless body, to be able to select our destiny. And the reason we're blind is because if we saw which destiny we were picking, we'd all pick the best one, full of love, money, and life, right?
Exactly.
So you have to go off of blind faith, and you pick one that feels like it would fit well, and you actually put your head on for the first time.
Okay.
Once that happens, you actually are knelt in front of 𝗀𝗲𝗍𝗍, or the Creator. And he looks at you and he says, okay, what do you want to do? And, you know, in my case, I said, I want to be a 𝗏𝗏𝗏. He's like, okay, well, that's good. And he says yes to everything. He's a merciful God. But he says, what do you offer as tribute? Because if you haven't noticed, there's 1 billion people waiting behind you to be born. So what are you going to give? In my specific case, I had to give some cornmeal to 𝗀𝗲𝗏, and I had to offer the head of a rat, right? When I did Ifa. So he was like, all right, that's acceptable. To be able to get to your goal, you have to go through these obstacles and tribulations. Now, there's another gentleman there who's really key in this whole process. His name is 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏. And the name 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏, when we actually break it down, means 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, which means in heaven I will find my destiny or purpose. Right?
Okay.
And this guy, his title is 𝗃𝗃𝗃, which means the witness of destiny. So he's the one next to 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 writing all this stuff down. And it comes out in one of the 256 combinations of spiritual binary code. So in my case, it was the Odu of 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, or 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗀𝗃. So 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 said this is going to be his Odu, this is what he selected. Which Orisha is going to alleviate his destiny? Which one of these divine emanations of God are going to be able to protect his destiny and his Ori, or head, to be able to accomplish his goals? In my case, it was the Orisha Oshun, right? The Orisha femininity. And, you know, apart from that, my ancestors were there. The other spirits who want to seek elevation through assisting me in accomplishing any of our purposes is there. And they all raise their hands. And at that point, it's all written down. And then 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 says, see you later. At that moment, you're born. And the reason you don't remember anything is because your mother's amniotic fluid, which is known as 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, or the water of forgetfulness, causes you to forget.
Okay.
You're crying because you just got kicked out of paradise and we got sent back to this place, right?
Okay.
So at 7 days for girls, or at 9 days for boys, you're taken to the house of a Babalawo, or 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏's son, or representation here on earth, to be able to reveal the destiny you left back in heaven, hence 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏's name.
Okay.
In that divination, we're going to identify your combination. We're going to identify your prophecy, which is the message you came down from heaven with. What were you destined for, right? Apart from that, we're going to identify the Orisha that you left back in heaven, which in my case was Ochun. And you're going to identify the debts and the things you promised. Now, the reason that's so key is because until, like in my case, the cornmeal was offered to 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏, or the rat head was offered in the form of 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏, my body, based on assimilating this energy from heaven into it, wasn't in harmony with nature. Okay. Now, it seems pretty trivial, like, wow, a whole life can go wrong over some cornmeal and a rat head. You'd be surprised. But when we make the offerings in the form of 𝗵𝗸𝗶 to nature, at that point, we begin to spin on the gradient of Earth rather than against it. I mean, the world is moving at 3,000, 4,000 miles an hour. You want to be going in the same direction, because anybody who tries to go against that grain, they don't last. Okay. So that's really the importance of it. And apart from all the other things we're meant to accomplish, but it is the first step towards fulfillment, right? Where so many people walk around the world saying, you know, why am I here? I'm not living in my purpose.
Exactly.
I feel frustrated.
Yes.
I didn't get married. I didn't have no kids. At least if these were goals, I didn't get my dream position. I didn't. So this is just to avoid that.
And that's one of my next questions that was going to be for you. For someone that, you know, has questions that's new to this, how do you know exactly what your offering was that you gave, that you promised before coming here, and things are not going the way that you planned it? So in my case, how do I know what actually was my offering? Like you say, you gave a rat's head and cornmeal.
Yeah,
So how would I know exactly what did I give?
absolutely. So the hand of Ifa is the first step. It's the first interaction where we make our way back to 𝗃𝗻𝗄𝗏's house through his representation on earth, which is a 𝗵𝗸𝗹𝗁. The word 𝗵𝗸𝗹 means father of the secrets, of father of that which cannot be seen, which is the position I hold within the faith of Ifa or Santeria, right? So through the hand of Ifa, we're not only going to manifest that person's personal Ifa icon, we're going to use it to identify what it is you did leave behind, right? So that's really the first step. The hand of Ifa is given by us, the 𝗵𝗸𝗹𝗁s, to help the person be reminded of what they left behind or what they promised, so that they can start seeing that fulfillment and progress on earth, which is once again why so many people, they're like, I live righteously, I have good character, I've prepared myself, I haven't delved into too much nonsense. Why are things not going my way? Western philosophy is very different from that of the East, where the divinity was kind of taken away from us. You know, in the West, we are taught to worship God, be fearful of God, right? Where in the East, whether it's Africa or any of the old cultures, we're taught to find the divine within ourselves, right? Because when you look at Western philosophy, if you're always answering to somebody, you never answer to self. Where the more Eastern, ancient aspects of interpretation really put the responsibility on you, where you're not able to blame anybody else, where you're able to recognize that there's certain actions we cannot be forgiven for. Nature holds no prisoners. So, you know, it really puts that responsibility back on us, and recognizing that there's divinity within all of us. Wow. This rational thought that we have as human beings, this free will, it's the extension of God within us to be able to govern our own lives to a certain degree.
Oh, wow. Wow. You said a mouthful just then. My next question is, why do you think Ifa is gaining so much recognition and so many followers today?
I think it's because it's allowing people to feel whole. You know, when you come from a philosophy where, you know, you're constantly being told what to do, or you're not being accepted, or anything that doesn't go with what your dogma states could send you to the inferno. Most people are afraid of that at this point, and most people don't want to be controlled like that. And we're not supposed to be. That's why we have this thing called a conscience. We're meant to hold ourselves accountable. Apart from the popular, you know, cultural influence, you know, you'll see some Ifa in a music video, you'll see a bracelet, you'll see an actor talking about it. I think it's ultimately this yearning for this new generation to get in contact with their roots, which is really why we named the podcast what we named it. But you have to wonder, what were we doing before the last 500 years of arriving in this country? You know, for anybody that's Afro-descendant, you look at Abrahamic faith or any other cultures or things being pushed in front of us. Even in school, there's no mention of Ifa or any of these amazing things that happened in Africa with our ancestors. You begin to wonder, what were we doing before? And most of the time, people come back to Ifa because of that call. They're like, you know, within this place of worship, I don't feel welcome. I don't feel myself. Like, there's something missing here, right? And as you start going further and further and further back to the root, which is what Ifa is, it's been recognized by Harvard as the root religion. You begin to realize, wow, the reason I didn't feel good after 500 years of displacement is because there were 50,000 other years of genetics spiritually that were calling me back.
Oh,
you know?
wow.
So when you look at the generation before us, possibly our parents, in my specific case, I was born Catholic, right? My mother was, my grandmother was Afro-Cuban. Mind you, she wasn't an Ifa practitioner until I got back into it, but the culture that we were from in 𝗃𝗄𝗋, her being Cuban and then us moving there after New York, it was always very present and prevalent, right?
Okay.
But for social reasons, you're in the church, but at the same time, as a young man, I'm there. I'm listening to the priest give his sermon and whatnot, and I'm realizing a lot of the things that most people get in trouble for, we're going to be doing right after we're done.
Exactly.
So, everybody goes to church during the day, and then the chicken comes into the house at night. So I think people are just tired of living in hiding. I think people want to be their real selves. I don't think people want to be motivated towards actions based on punishment rather than empowerment. Ifa is all about empowerment and recognizing the divinity each of us has, because all of us have the opportunity to become God. All of us have the opportunity to reach a level of elevation where we can begin feeling that vibration or that frequency. That doesn't mean we can turn water into wine. That doesn't mean we could, fly. But, Ifa is saying that we can recreate condition in this reincarnation to the point where we can live all the positive aspects of our ancestors.
Okay. And another question I have for you. What is the biggest misconception about Ifa people have about it? Like, what is the biggest misconception people have about Ifa?
I tell you, I was just talking about this with Phil. I think people think that we're just walking around all day killing chickens and dancing and playing drums and whatnot. I was just talking about this with Philip, is that, apart from being my spirituality, Ifa also has connotations within my business based on us having a botanica. So there's aspects that are definitely simply work. So, when I hang up my green and yellow cap and I go home to my family and I'm spending time with my kids, Ifa actually isn't much of a conversational point within my household, other than if we're doing something specifically or if it's work related, apart from my own personal study and things like that. I think a lot of people think that this is just what we do 24 hours a day, or that there's a fanatical aspect of it. I think the animal thing and sacrifice can be a little adverse for some people, because once again, that's a way that you kind of you nullify people's empathy.
Okay.
When you come from a culture where you actually see the animal die before you consume it, there's a sense of respect and communion with that life that's been given, as opposed to going to a fast food chain and here's a burger, that you have no idea where it came from, and if you eat too many of them, it might have some negative effects. So I think, the idea that there's something unnatural about animal sacrifice is really the problem at large, because, beforehand, when we were so in contact with our natural aspects of being animals ourselves, now we're so detached from it that anything that goes against the grain or the 𝘃 is seen as demonic, right? And when you look at even the concept of evil and things like that, Ifa isn't really concerned with evil. Is there evil? Yes, but evil is more defined by that which is immoral and unnatural, rather than, this concept of Lucifer or any of these things.
Okay.
Is what we're doing natural? Is what we're doing moral? And based on nature, all of the qualities of Ifa are in line with it, because Ifa is nothing more than the description of nature and how we're meant to interact with it. It's nothing more than a nature-based religion. So I think that's the biggest misconception, that we're devil worshippers, or that we're harming people, or that we're harming ourselves, or torturing animals. And I think that's a lot of propaganda to kind of keep people away from ATRs in general, so that they keep, having having to follow a faith that they really don't feel in conjunction with.
Okay, and my last question to you would be, actually two questions, because I definitely want to get your opinion on this. How can someone, what has Ifa taught you about life, purpose, and spirituality? What has it taught you so far?
I would say before Ifa, I had very little understanding, not only of the exterior, but myself. I always have considered myself a good person, but definitely before Ifa, I was much rougher around the edges, whether it was due to environment, whether it was due to influence. And I think Ifa converted me into a man and a gentleman, apart from my wife and all the things that come with life and the you know, the lessons and things I learned from my mother and my grandmother and the people in my community. Ifa, the whole central concept of Ifa is 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, which means good conduct, right? Good character. But to be able to arrive at this concept, we need to have suru, which is patience. That's why the Odu of 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗍 says, suru baba newcomer, which means patience is the father of good character and conduct.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So I think that, especially within my own manifestation as a man, father, head of household, whatever defines me, patience has been the greatest lesson I've learned from Ifa. And what is patience? Patience is knowing that the other person's wrong with their viewpoint, but not investing energy into disputing it with them. You know, allowing them to get to their own point of awakening, rather than trying to carry on pointless debate and all these other things. We're in a time now where there's so much tension.
That is so true. That is so true.
And everybody's trying to push a dialogue and a rhetoric rather than, you know, listening to understand, rather than to influence and respond. So I think Ifa has put me in a position to feel so self-confident with what I've been able to learn and the real world results and practice that come with it. I don't feel the need to defend my beliefs to anyone. And mind you, you really have to be careful with anybody who's trying to proletize something to the point of discomfort, you know? Sometimes we get negative attention from certain groups and whatnot where, you know, conversion and things like that may be their goal. You know, to debate with someone who is misinformed is to prove there's two misinformed people in a room. So, you know, silence and patience are usually the best response to people like that, because you have to think, if 50,000 years worth of people believed in something and then all of a sudden, you know, for the last, you know, couple centuries we changed up, who was right and who was wrong, who was longevitous, who had self-confidence, who had results, who had a track record. So I can't bring my ancestors' beliefs into question by trying to debate with somebody whose discipline just arrived.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think that's what it's taught me, is patience. As a father, as a husband, as a son, all of those things, as a godfather.
Question for you. Growing up, my mother, just like you say, your grandmother was in the Catholic Church. My mother was in the Baptist church as well. And now, one thing that we were always taught, and I want you to give your opinion on this with Ifa, patience is something that you do not pray for. Because they say if you pray for patience, all hell breaks loose in your life, and everything starts going wrong in your life because it's giving you patience. How do you feel about that statement in general when it comes to Ifa?
I think, you know, I remember somebody told me that don't pray for something, respond accordingly when God gives you the opportunity to assume it, right? But my question is if we don't pray for patience, what do we pray for? If we don't have hope, what do we wait for? You know, and regardless of how virtuous we want to be or seem, there are certain situations that are going to be presented to an adult or a human being or part of society that you need to have some divine confluence that's going to help you arrive at that. Now, I'm not saying, you know, make the wrong decision because the patience didn't arrive from the sky, but I am saying we need to prepare and educate ourselves spiritually to the point when certain things do present themselves, we're able to rely on that preparation to be able to respond accordingly. Because you in the moment, you might not have that wherewithal.
Exactly.
But like for someone such as myself that has studied Ifa so countlessly for so long, the whole concept of let go and let God really does take over, because there's situations that have been in front of me where, you know, I want to react a certain way.
Exactly.
And then, you know, my practice, my priesthood, my philosophy has kicked in at that moment and say, hey, that's not the way. So I think ultimately I understand the concept, but through preparation and through living righteously, I think something else or a neuron or a synapse is going to enact at that moment to remind you, hey, this is the higher path that you need to take a step towards. Right?
That is so true. I agree with you 100% with that. And it's knowledgeable as well that you say that. My last question would be for you. What do you hope that people have taken away from this conversation about Ifa?
I hope, and, you know, I believe that it will show that two people from two completely different walks of life can sit down and have a conversation in an amicable way, trying to understand rather than rebuttal. A lot of people, Ifa is really perplexing to some people because I have people that have initiated into Ifa that practice other spiritualities entirely. And they're like, how is this possible? And I tell them there's many paths to Rome and there's many paths to God. Everything is spirituality, but it'll look different depending on culture, geography, all these different things. The most alarming thing for me as a priest is that we can't sit down and try to understand each other. We can't sit down and focus on what unifies us rather than what separates us. Whatever somebody chooses to do within their home is their business, as long as they're not hurting anybody.
Exactly.
So who am I to try to influence your home? My biggest goal with that, with whatever we've done with our channel or with any conversation about Ifa, is just explaining who we are in a legitimate, honest, transparent fashion so that people can have all the information necessary to choose what they want to practice at that moment. But I knew 𝗃𝗲𝗍𝗏 was the guy for me because he's the only prophet, at least the way they're being exposed or the way they're being presented, that didn't send anybody to damnation for not only believing in him.
Wow.
When I've looked at other practices, hey, if you're not here, you're nowhere. If you're not here, you're wrong. 𝗃𝗲𝗍𝗏 was like, as long as you fulfill with me and you follow the laws of nature, which apply to all of us, you can practice whatever else is full of love and logic. 𝗃𝗲𝗍𝗏 said, wherever there's logic, that's where you'll find me. So everything is in Ifa, but not everything is Ifa, right?
Okay.
So what I mean by that is I can have an oddu that speaks of yoga and the manifestation of yoga, but maybe, within our practice, we didn't do emphasis on that. But then you have someone from a different spirituality, let's say Hinduism, what have you, a yogi that spent his whole life trying to understand the art of stretching and breathing and meditation. Even though he doesn't practice Ifa, what he's doing is within Ifa. So there's no reason I can't collaborate with this gentleman and learn something.
Exactly.
I don't have to say, hey, you're not wearing green and yellow. That's wrong. By no means. Believe it or not, the more you learn, the more you realize less is wrong, because there's so many different ways to accomplish a positive result. So that's my biggest goal with any conversation, this one, anyone, is that we can sit down and talk without becoming aggressive, without, all this tension. And you begin to realize the people who choose to speak a certain way, who choose to present things in a way that are incendiary, that are going to really, cause a visceral response, there might be some money or some influence that's behind motivating them, and that's not what we're here for.
And I don't think that they're probably practicing what they're preaching as well. Because if you have to be so aggressive with what you're trying to put on me, like, come on, what is it that you're trying to prove? It doesn't, you don't have to prove. Just like you say, we come from different walks of life.
Yes, ma'am.
And from what I'm hearing is that no matter what practice, even with Ifa, if I decide to pray, we're all going down that spiritual connection as one. We're seeing it as one. Whether you say Ifa, whether you say Jah, whether you say Jesus, your belief is your belief, and you don't have to really push your belief onto others and make them feel uncomfortable. I enjoy this.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed this. I mean, I learned so much.
As did I.
Hopefully, just a few of these questions, because they even helped me.
Yes,
like
ma'am.
I said, I was in the back, asking questions and everything, and Phil was like, I think you should
Just
do
ask
this.
him.
Yes, just
we're
ask
harmless.
him. So this was such a pleasure just sitting here and talking to you and learning about this, because hopefully whoever sees this next, they will, be able to dissect it and understand it the way I have as well. And I hope this helped them as well.
Joy, you got any questions for Joy?
Of course I do.
Go ahead.
I will say this, because being a parent, it really has changed my whole mentality. I think that's, I always say when I was younger, my goal was to be the best 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗏 I could be. And now as a father and a husband, those are really my biggest goals, is to be the best of those that I can be. You being a mother, if we wouldn't have had this conversation, and let's say one of your children came to you and said, oh my God, I want to start this new spirituality, how would a conversation like this help you relax?
With me, because I'm so open,
Nice.
I have gotten to the point that I don't want to push my beliefs off on my kids.
Likewise.
And whatever my kids decide to do with their life, I'm going to back them 100%.
Nice.
So I would ask them, hey, what made you come to this conclusion? Have you studied about it? Is this something you truly want to do? Is this something you're serious about doing? And I will 100% back my son up. If that's a practice that he wants to practice and that he wants to go down, I'm 100% for him, because in my culture, the Bible says, do not turn your children against wrath,
Yes, ma'am.
to anger. So why would I force him to anger? Now he's angry with me. And whatever practice that, if he wants to go Ifa, this may be a way that's saving his soul. So I don't want to push him away from his belief, because it says, train up a child in the way that they should go. When they get old, they should not depart.
Yeah.
So with that being said, he knows, and whatever he believes in, I'm 100% behind him. I'm not going to be a mother that said, oh, don't talk to me, don't speak to me anymore. I say this to say that this part, there's so many kids, I don't know, and this just to back up just a little bit. A lot of kids today in society, they are dealing with identity crisis.
Yes, ma'am.
And not only are they dealing with identity crisis, they're dealing with peer pressure. They're dealing with, the LGBT community.
Yes,
They're dealing with so much. And this is my thing. Love them.
Yes, ma'am.
Love them 100%. Because if you push them away, you may never see them again.
Yes, ma'am.
So love them, hold on to them, and whatever their beliefs in, back them up 100%. Because someone had to back you up in your beliefs growing up.
Yeah, we've all been there. Yeah.
So your parents had to back you up, whether you knew how it felt if they didn't agree with what you said. So why would you put your child through that same scenario?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think that I would definitely back up my child.
I concur with you. I think the greatest risk we take as parents, apart from in itself being the greatest risk, just being a parent, is the risk of our children doing the complete opposite of what we would do, and still recognizing that it still could be positive, that they don't have to do things the way we did them or go through the things we did to be able to be successful and be fulfilled. And I always, because I have clients come in and people, and they're like, my son this, my daughter this. I'm like, are they killing anybody? No. They're being upstanding in the community and being righteous? Yes. Well, then what else can we say? What else can we ask for? I tell you, I look at my children, I look at my godchildren, and I don't think there's anything worse at that stage of life than feeling like there's somebody you can't talk to.
Exactly.
The feeling of loneliness, especially in adolescence. And I think it's become more difficult now because I don't think they're even being given an opportunity to introspect. When you have this thing like the telephone, you have social media, when it's immoderate and unmitigated, they're looking for all these confirmations externally. They don't know who they are in here.
Exactly. And what's going to happen now is so many people may go on TikTok. What is Ifa? May go on
terrifying.
YouTube. What is
Yeah.
Ifa? Let's research this. Now they may see this podcast and be like, what is this? This is interesting. Let me research this. And then they dig in deeper and see things that you're speaking about and how powerful it is. Now, this is my last question to you.
Yes,
now,
ma'am.
I'm here in Orlando, local. And if someone would want to come see or speak to you, do you have any place that, people can come see and speak to you?
I tell you, with the way things have kind of maneuvered and manifested with the channel, we never expected this kind of response. This was all my wife's idea, to be frank with you. Hey,
oh, wow.
Because, when we first started interacting and studying Ifa together, she's like, so many things that you've been able to clarify for me. You have to think there must be, a couple thousand more people have these same questions and want to just understand to be able to make the decision that's best for them and their family. So I said, all right, let's make a video. And then here we are, some odd years later. Interaction has become very difficult from a personal standpoint. I mean, I have clients from when I opened the business, or we opened our business, 6-7 years ago, that when I was still doing readings in person, you know, where you could actually still, you know, walk in. And, you know, those are the days I honestly miss the most. I remember I was studying entrepreneurship and trying to understand what it is to really own a business and how to serve your community. And one of these big tycoons said, you know, what I miss the most is opening my doors, sweeping the floor, making the coffee, shaking hands, smiling, having those conversations. Those are the things I miss the most. And they still happen to a certain degree, but it's much more limited to be able to accommodate everybody else's schedule. But the best way to interact with me, frankly, is to initiate into our spiritual house.
Okay.
We also have a coaching option, which is much less intensive, but it isn't interpersonal. It is over the phone. We're just kind of getting to the stage to be able to interact with everybody and satisfy everybody's needs. We have to use these medium points because to be able to accommodate, you know, just the viewership and the subscribership, it definitely spreads us thin. And I enjoy every moment of it.
Yes,
you know, just
yes.
meeting people like you, meeting random people that come into the store. You know, Ifa is one of the things I've enjoyed conversing the most about in my life, and being able to take a complex concept, because I can't think of anything more complex than spirituality. And that's not to take away from a physician or a physicist, but they're able to explain things that are tangible, right? They're able to dissect them, and there's formulas. But with spiritual science, I have to find a way to impart this idea in my mind and yours, right? In the most unbiased way possible. So, you know, God, whatever the power may be, has given me the opportunity to practice at it to the point where we've been able to be productive with it and do it, right, to get this response. So interacting, Botanica Candles and More is open 7 days a week other than major holidays. Coachings are really great because you'll still be able to get me on the phone. Like, we haven't, you know, become so isolated to the point where we can't interact. It's just through a medium point at this point. But I look forward to every single one of them.
Well, I definitely look forward to speaking more with you and getting more with you. And I want to, I don't know, hopefully this was meant to be today.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
We were talking earlier.
Yeah.
And you were telling me about what happened earlier with your wife.
Completely random. Yeah. You know, the wife should be like, yo, you only got like 2 episodes left. I'm like, oh, no. So, you know, we got this recording on a Saturday, which is very rare because me and Phil were usually together, you know, Sundays or other days. And then, you know, you came in with your podcast and what you're working on with him as well, and just checking in. And I still have this belief that no interaction is coincidence.
Yes.
Everything is destiny. Everything is written. And I think, you know, the characteristics of the interaction further, you know, reiterate that and confirm that.
Yes.
So even if it was nothing more than a fabulous conversation, it was well worth it.
Well, hopefully your wife sees this.
Definitely. She
show.
Watches everything.
And let me tell you, I'm the young lady that she probably dreamed about. So,
so
make sure you tell her.
I will.
That just blew my mind.
As did I. There's very few things. I mean, spirituality still impresses me, but some people be like, man, Baba, you know, you're just used to all this, you know, miraculous stuff. And I'm like, I might be used to it, but, you know, there's still certain things that I'm like, wow, you know, it's a reminder that this is real.
Yes.
You know, the random dream, the random, you know, encounter, visit, all these different things.
Yes.
It lets you know that we're just part of this huge spider web.
Exactly. So I appreciate you sharing everything. I look forward to seeing you, speaking with you more and everything. So I appreciate you giving me the time to speak to you and ask you questions. And hopefully this helps so many people, you know, moving forward. Thank you so much.
No, the pleasure's all mine. And just for everybody that's watching and to yourself, I was in that chair. All of us that are, you know, versed in anything, we're in that chair of inquiry, you know.
Yes.
Wow, this is interesting. What's comforting for me is that anything that was said here sparked any interest whatsoever. You know, when there's so many options, and then you have TikTok pushing a narrative, or YouTube, or any of these social media platforms, for anything coherent and logical to sound of interest is really comforting for me. And it lets me know that Ifa is going to be around, just like so many other spiritualities, for people who are trying to find information to better themselves. So I wish you the best on your podcast ventures as well.
Thank you.
And you know, we're all part of Phil's army.
There you go. There you go. Thank you so much, Phil, for this opportunity.
This was needed, man.
Lovely.
You know, those watching, please leave your thoughts below in the chat so we can catch up to them, and make sure you follow Joy's podcast.
Absolutely. Check for it in the description, guys.
Nobody's Safe
Nobody's
podcast.
safe.
Yeah,
Nobody's Safe podcast.
So guess what?
Oh, member time, baby.
It's that time.
Very nice.
Time to show some love to people who show love to the channel. It's real simple, guys. All you gotta do is click that button underneath the video that says join our membership program. We gotta figure out a name. We gotta come out with a name.
Yeah, we're waiting, yeah.
Just for the members. I don't know. I can't think of anything on top of my head. So you guys make sure to drop those comments below. I wanna read them.
Yeah, they got us, yeah.
So we got 3 different tiers, each tier offering its own different perks, whether it's extra episodes to shows, early releases to podcast episodes, discounts on merch, you name it. All right, we're gonna show some love to the VIP members here.
Nice.
These members are the crème à la crème.
You gotta work on that French, Phil.
Crème à la crème, or Macho Man says the cream to the crop.
Oh man.
Oh yeah. All right, so here we go. Hemp Lord.
Oh man, OG.
We got It's Miss Chambers.
Thank you.
We got Bernie.
Very important.
We got Annetta Thompson.
Thank you.
Angela Elizabeth.
Very nice.
Sun,
Oh yeah.
the Black Adonis.
Okay, yeah, I've been around for a while. Yeah.
That's my wrestling name.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that.
We got
I'll Google it.
Clear Life Movement.
Nice.
Carl Barnes
Thank
and
you.
𝗃𝗄𝗎𝗄𝗎.
Absolutely. Shout out to Juju and shout out to all the members. You're the best part of the channel. We appreciate you. If you know anybody that can benefit from it, be sure to let them know, guys. Shout out to our sponsors. Luna Hall and Studio is ready to be rented for any of those wonderful events you have, as well as Ifa and ATR event space and center for any ceremony that you want privacy and prestige. They're great. Be sure to check out as well. Precision auto detailing. Those brothers will make your car look wonderful for sure. Be sure to check out Miss Joy's podcast once again in the description. 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗄𝗎𝗿𝗄𝗎 is up and running for all your product and service needs. We do ship. Catch us on, the audio cast, whether it be Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or any of those major platforms to hear us if you can't watch us here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, guys. A big thank you from here at Our Roots Podcast. And until next time, see the light.
Baba Joseph showed the path today. Baba knows the way, we follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred lines. He speaks with the ancients, he honors the drum. He carries the wisdom where we all come from.